Well, you've already got Brent Cox at Florida, and Cade Mays at Tennessee. What if Brock Vandegrift went to South Carolina, Matt? This this could be the new future in the SEC, and we just don't know how this is going to land. The NCAA is set to allow transfers one time to from one school to the next, no penalty. You don't have to wait out. The SEC is trying to figure out, Matt, how to handle this, and could you have internal in conference transfers? Dean Legge, Matt DeBerry, as always, here from Dog Post. Make sure you go to the website, dogpost.com, dawgpost.com, dogpost.com. Matt, that would be a wild scenario, but that could be the new future of this league.
Yeah, I totally understand why SEC coaches would not like this rule. You recruit a kid, get to know him over a few years, and if he doesn't like it after year one, transfers to a big time rival. And we saw with Brent Cox, like you said, we've seen it with Cade Mays. And I think Eric Gilbert is kind of waiting on this news too. I think he would love to play in the SEC immediately this fall if he can get everything straightened out on the off the field, all that good stuff. But I do think that it opens up a giant hole, and you would see more of it very, very soon. As soon as you implement that, it could turn into a wild, wild SEC East instead of Wild Wild West scenario where guys are jumping left and right if they feel like they're behind on the depth chart and they've only been for a place at 1 year, and another big time SEC program says, hey, we've lost a couple kids, we've had some graduate, now's a perfect time, we'd love to have you. Yeah, kids are going to have their ear open for sure. I mean, we see it at the high school level, or I see it at the high school level.
Yes.
Kids are transferring left and right in high school football. I can only imagine if it's fully allowed in the SEC. Yeah, kids are going to be transferring all willy nilly.
Well, it's kind of, we were not permitted to do this back in the day. You were allowed to transfer, but you couldn't, you had to sit out. And so that did, some guys were okay with that. They just go and sit out for a year. They didn't really care. But in the SEC, I think kind of Kirby was talking about this the other day. And his point was, do we really want to get into this situation where we don't know what, I mean, there's no telling what sort of chaos could happen. Why can't folks go play in any of the other, non-14 SEC schools? But it's going to be hard. The SEC can keep its own rules. There are league rules dictating transfers right now for grad transfers and just transfers generally speaking. But this past year, Cade Mays played. He didn't sit out. Brent Cox did sit out in 2019, I think it was, but he played in 2020. So Brent Cox was the same old rules. Cade Mays got new rules, and once you start with new rules, and they Commissioner Sankey claimed that it was about the pandemic, and he's probably right that was the reason. But once you start something, it might not stop. And I mean, you could certainly see that the position where this would change the most would be quarterbacks. I mean, if you weren't happy in Athens or Tuscaloosa, you could go play in Knoxville.
Yeah. Offensive line is a position you don't see that most of, but we've seen some defensive backs transfer. Obviously, we've seen some defensive linemen transfer out. But I do agree it'd be mostly quarterback, maybe not so much running back and receivers. But I do think if this were to happen, Kirby has got to adapt. He can't be slow on it. He needs to just be like, okay, let me go get whoever I can if I need to. So he definitely has to acknowledge the rules and then jump full into it.
What do you
Because everyone
think?
else is going to. Everyone else is going to be trying to reach out to some of these Georgia kids, these
Oh, yeah.
former 4, maybe 5-star players who aren't getting the playing time at Georgia that they could at a place like Kentucky or Missouri or Auburn or Florida and so on.
What about Eric Gilbert though? I mean, I know we weren't really supposed to talk about Eric during this whole thing, but his situation, it's hard to tell really what his thing is. Someone was asking me on Dog Post the other day, does he have something against Georgia? I'm not aware of that. I just think that it seems to me like the Georgia coaches have an understanding of Eric Gilbert, and they didn't immediately think that he would transfer to Georgia right away after he left LSU. But here we are in the middle of May. I mean, you're right. This could affect Eric right away. But, I mean, do you see him playing football in the fall?
There's so much that I don't know. I think behind the scenes and possibly academically or whatever. But I think he's fun to watch. I hope he does get to play in the fall. But I think if that were the plan, he would have picked somewhere by now. I
But
think
what happened with the Florida thing? I mean,
that's something I'm still trying to figure out. I think he could
right.
go back to LSU. I think he could go back to Florida. But this isn't a situation where Georgia didn't recruit him because they
Oh no, I know
absolutely
that.
wanted him. They
Yeah.
they did want him. But like you said earlier, once he entered the transfer portal, I think Todd Harley was very happy with the room he has and the potential targets out there for the 22 class and beyond. So I don't think it was a priority. I also think Eric liked the idea of playing some receiver too and catching a lot of passes. And as we saw with Darnell, he just wasn't going to get those opportunities at tight end at Georgia.
I don't know, but Eric Gilbert is an exceptional player. I don't know where I don't know where he's going to end
Yes,
up,
he
but he
is.
is an exceptional player. I do wonder with guys like Max Johnson, who's the quarterback at LSU, who may or may not win that position out there. Um,
I
any,
think he will because they had a quarterback transfer. I think TJ Finley entered the transfer portal a few days ago, if I
but was
got
that
that
the guy
correct.
that was trying to compete against him?
I think he's the guy that Max took his job because he threw all over South Carolina for 500 plus yards or something, and then had a really bad game, and then Max Johnson took over, and I think that kid is now in the portal.
But
But I could be
I'm thinking of Miles Brennan. T.J. Finley was never going to get it done for LSU. I mean, it was Miles Brennan who I'm
I think
thinking
he,
of.
he had to have been hurt at the time when TJ was playing, and
Well, nonetheless, I mean, you see these situations, and Les Miles, when he don't have a quarterback, it's usually pretty bad. I said Les Miles, man, good lord. Well, Les Miles certainly, but any coach at LSU, including Easy Ed Orgeron, it's not done well. What do you think for lack of a better term, a deregulated SEC would be like? I mean, when a guy could go from playing for Arkansas one year and playing for Auburn the next, how unstable would that make the league?
really unstable. And I think it goes back to recruiting too, which is what I do a lot of over at Dog Post and the implications there. I mean, do you recruit kids as hard? Do you recruit more guys? It makes you keep in touch with kids. You don't want to burn any bridges at all
Yeah, but you
whatsoever.
can't tamper. I mean, once you start
Right.
talking about that, that's a real problem, wouldn't
Yeah.
you say?
Yeah, I don't know how much of a gray area there is with all this stuff, but
Pretty gray.
it would be, yeah, pretty gray. And yeah, you're going to have some schools and particular coaches, maneuver around and figure out, especially when it just first starts happening and no one really knows how much it is going to impact how many kids are going to try to do this. So, but if they do open it up, I think it could get really intense really quickly. I guess, but there'd be a lot going on and more reason to head over to Dog Post because that stuff we'll be on top of. That's more work for us trying to figure out what's
I
going on.
was just gonna say it's these are the type of times where traffic really shoots up over at Dog Post. Hey, please go to the site dogpost.com, dawgpos.com. We'll talk to you over there. See you over there on the website.